Following reports of the U.S. intensifying its military presence in the West Asian region, senior Iranian officials have issued a stern counter-warning to the Trump administration. Iran has made its stance clear that it will treat any attack on it as an all-out war and respond in the harshest way possible. United States, on the other hand, has assembled a massive military presence in the Middle East, raising speculations that President Trump may be preparing for a potential strike against the Iranian regime. President Donald Trump confirmed a massive U.S. naval armada is heading towards the Gulf, stressing readiness despite hopes that it will not be used. With warships redeployed and the aircraft repositioned, Washington's message to Tehran is unmistakable.
Actually, statement is not new. It has been issued since 4 decades ago. But we are ready also for everything. We are not looking for the war, and we are against the war. Never Iran created any war within last 2-3 century. But if they wanted to do anything, Iran is ready for that.
Iran's economy is in deep trouble, mainly because of the sanctions reimposed by Trump in his first term in 2018. But having said that, we also should understand that Israel and Reza Pahlavi have been wanting to carry a campaign to bring out a regime change. Now, they have failed till now. And my own view is that they do not stand much of a chance for regime change.
Pranay Upadhyaya joins me on the broadcast with more details on this particular story itself. Pranay, very good morning to you. Let us understand one thing at this point of time, which is Iran's preparedness at this point of time when we speak of a potential U.S. military intervention into the situation that's escalating, domestically speaking, within Iran, an anti-regime protest that we see.
Rising very fast because of the military deployment by the United States military in the region, especially in the Central Command area and its jurisdiction in the region. And besides that, Iran is also building up. There are reports, however, there is no confirmation from Tehran regarding any force accretion and any foreign military help. But there are reports suggesting that there are multiple, Chinese military aircrafts landed in Tehran in last few hours, and there are some social media reports suggesting that there is some kind of an aid coming to Tehran. So really there is a military buildup. There are tensions rising in the region, and especially where President Donald Trump himself has indicated that there is a naval flotilla of U.S. military, U.S. Navy heading towards the region. In fact, we know people are tracking the movement of USS Abraham Lincoln, the aircraft carrier, and the carrier battle group associated with that aircraft carrier. That is there in the region. And now there has been some force accretion, and the multiple aircrafts of the U.S. military landed at Al Udeid base in Bahrain and Oman, and other military bases of United States in Gulf region. So this clearly shows that there is a military buildup by the United States. There are additional sanctions being put by United States on Iran recently in last 12 hours. There is additional, stringent measures taken by the United States against the Tehran's oil fleet and oil business, especially sanctioning those entities. And this is said to be this is being called as a targeted action against the dark shadow fleet of Iran selling petroleum and defying the oil sanctions. So this clearly shows that the United States is making a case and building up pressure. You heard experts and people, those who are indicating that how Reza Pahlavi is also the exiled crown prince of Iran, is also making a lot of and raising his voice. And also, he has said that soon he's likely to return to Iran at a time when, obviously there are tensions in Iran. There were protests in Iran. However, the government of Iran has clearly said that, they will not let there be any foreign intervention. They will not allow any foreign intervention. And if Iran does not want a war, but if war is imposed on Iran, then there will be a retaliation and they will retaliate with full force.
Right, Pranay. So yes, definitely. One also needs to keep into account that when we speak of Iran, it's only in the recent past, last year itself, that we've seen an American operation against the Iranian nuclear facilities itself. So one that also needs to keep that in mind when we are speaking of Iran's preparedness. But another question here comes in is that what exactly is at stake for the United States when it's intervening into a domestic matter that's escalating in Iran? What exactly is the interest if we speak of? Because Trump always has a vested interest when he acts anywhere across the world. If we speak of Iran, of course, we've looked at tariffs. We've looked at how, of course, there is the energy supply that we are speaking of. But at the same time, US will be very wary of attacking an Iran or escalating attacks on an Iran, given that it is one of the sources of global energy supply.
You're absolutely right, Shreya, but we have to look into the history of Iran-US relation, especially the history of Iran-US relation post 1979. You know that how Islamic Revolution happened in Iran, and in fact, how did the US embassy siege happen at that point of time? And since then, US does not have any diplomatic presence in Tehran, and in fact, they operate via the embassy of Switzerland there in Tehran. There was a time in history when US and Iran had very friendly, very good relation. In fact, you'll recall that that was a time when Raza Pahlavi, his family, and was supported by the United States. In fact, they enjoyed good military partnership with Iran at that point of time. But post-Islamic Revolution, because that Islamic Revolution of 1979, led by Ayatollah Khomeini, it targeted the US intervention. In fact, what happened in 1951, the ouster of the Mullah Musaddiq's government, who tried nationalizing the oil resources of Iran. In fact, there is a history, there is an interest in oil sector of Iran because Iran has huge oil resource. And in fact, in West Asia, if the first oil well was dug, that was in the region, that was in Iran, that was controlled by the British and American companies. And since then, US had its involvement. And in fact, during the Second World War, they did military supplies. The Allied forces made their military supplies to help the Soviet army, the Red Army, via Iran. So Iran played a crucial role in terms of the geographical and strategic importance and in terms of the economic interest of the Western powers. But many things have changed in post 1979. And in fact, there was a long Iran-Iraq war where the United States supported the Saddam Hussein government of Iraq. And in fact, that also, spoiled the relation between, and in fact, made those relations of Iran and United States very acrimonious. And thereafter, we have seen that how President Donald Trump, post 2016, ordered the killing of Qasem Soleimani, the IRGC commander, who was actually coordinating, so-called the proxies or the outfits, which Iran calls axis of resistance. In fact, the Iran operation is important in terms of the U.S. interest in Israel, in terms of warding off the threats of Hezbollahs, of Hasdal Shabi, of Houthis, and Hamas in the region.
Right, Pranay. So that definitely is a lot for the United States when we speak of in terms of interests for Trump in itself, when we speak of why the US is intervening into a domestic matter that has gripped as an escalation within Iran. Pranay, do stay with us.